Okay, you can see Darlie Routier, The Wrong Man. It's got two New York detectives in it. One, Jerry Pallas, who still is active, and Reginald Britt, who is still active. Jerry Pallas was always the narrator for this show, and it was geared towards her innocence. And I can tell you how I know that right off the rip. It's because Darla Key was in it with Dana. So I found a couple things wrong with The Wrong Man. Just a couple. I'm barely going through it. So I want to start here. This is one of the things that went wrong.
Case for himself. He agreed that a 20-second tape of a woman shooting silly string was the final blow that convicted Darlie Routier.
When the defense attorney was cross-examining the lead investigator, he got about halfway through, and the judge advised him to take the fifth.
The judge advised him to take the fifth. This is all you'll hear, is that the judge advised him to take the fifth. Now watch.
Which investigator was that?
This was Jimmy Patterson, because Patterson had wiretap and the gravesite, looking for a gravesite confession.
That's all he says, is because he had it wiretapped. He doesn't say the reason why he took the fifth. It's because Doug Mulder, Darlie's attorney, told him he was going to go to jail for that. He accused him of crime in open court. That's why the judge advised it. And that's the only thing that Jimmy Patterson didn't speak about again. But the way they portray it here is they don't tell you that. I'll take it back a little bit.
For himself. He agreed that a 20-second tape of a woman shooting silly string was the final blow that convicted Darlie Routier.
When the defense attorney was cross-examining the lead investigator, he got about halfway through, and the judge advised him to take the fifth.
Now, if you are just watching the show, you think that the judge just stopped and said, hey, you better take the fifth. They don't tell you why he did that. And everybody, when you're accused of a crime, you have the right to not testify against yourself. And if he were to be questioned about that wiretapping, he would, in a sense, be testifying against himself. But they don't tell you that here in this show.
Which investigator was that?
This was Jimmy Patterson, because Patterson had wiretap and the gravesite, looking for a gravesite confession.
The fact that a police officer took the Fifth Amendment, to me, as a jury, that would be the end of their credibility. I have never.
Now, he was accused of a crime. And this other Reginald, he's about to say, I have never.
And I've testified, I can't tell you, hundreds of homicide trials. I have never took a Fifth Amendment. I said no.
Now, has any defense attorney ever accused him of a crime while he was on the stand?
It's against self-incrimination, exactly. And you're the officer, the lead officer in the case. I can't imagine the judge allowing a capital murder case to continue when you can't cross-examine the lead.
He did. He was able to cross-examine him. See, the trial transcript will tell you clearly that they won't speak on that subject. That subject being the wiretapping of the gravesite. Now, this took place in 2007.
Investigator, because he took the Fifth Amendment.
That's incredible.
But I'm going to tell you, there's not one piece of direct evidence, not really one piece of credible evidence, why she should spend 10 years on death row or certainly be executed.
You don't do that without a court order. You just can't wiretap somebody, listen to a conversation.
Now they don't say that they took the Fifth Amendment on it, but now they mention it. They didn't need a court order to wiretap the gravesite. He's saying you don't do that. You don't take you need a court order to wiretap somebody. You do need a court order to bug somebody's phone, to put up bugs in their house. Like the mob, they got bugged all the time. They had to have a court order to do that, to their house, to like the Ravenite Club, where John Gotti was. They had to get a court order to bug the Ravenite that actually got John Gotti busted. They had to have a court order to do that because they're private. That's your private home. That's your private club. The thing with Rest Haven was it was public. And they're not explaining this to you. It was a public place, and the law says you have no expectation of privacy in a public setting. But they don't go into that in this show. Now, the way he says this, watch.
You don't do that without a court order. You just can't wiretap somebody, listen to a conversation, let alone the video, the audio. I mean, that's police work 101.
Sure. Police work 101. He's absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct. In the end, Jimmy Patterson and Chris Frost, who took the fifth on that subject and that subject only, were found innocent because they were in a public setting. Now, if they wanted to bug Darlie's house, they would have had to have a court order. If they wanted to bug Darlie's car, they would have had to have a court order. Because you're not in public. You're in the privacy of your own home. And just like Paul Castellano's house. The White House. The mob guy that got killed in front of Sparks. It took them forever to get the FBI to get the court order to bug his house because it's private. But in public, no. So that's something wrong with the wrong man.
That stuff.
I think that it should have been thrown out. That whole thing should have been thrown out based on the investigator taking the Fifth Amendment.
Those things are...
No. And they don't explain to you why. The Supreme Court upheld it. The difference between public wiretapping and private wiretapping. Jerry Palance was talking about private wiretapping. You don't record somebody's conversations, blah, blah, blah. If they wanted to record, Darren and Darlie's phones, that's what they would have had to do is get a court order. So he was correct on that, but not in public.
True. I think that's really big. I mean, to me, it sounds like Darlie could be the wrong woman.
Now, look, he's saying this based on that. So that's something wrong with the wrong man. Let's move on a little bit further. Okay, let's move through it.
Still out there. That's the real scary part. Man, that a monster like that could be out there. I tell you one thing, I'd be locking my doors. The next day, we met with Skip Hollingsworth, a local journalist who has covered Darlie's case from the very beginning.
Nice.
Beautiful area.
Nice home.
He claimed to have information about Darlie's husband, Darren, that would blow our investigation wide open. Thanks.
If Darlie, the victim, says, my husband Darren had nothing to do with it, and the evidence and the prosecution goes with her, why would they go after Darren?
Why would they go after Darren? Yeah. I got to know this defense attorney that was handling the appeals named Stephen Cooper, and he said to me, Darren's father-in-law, Bob Key, has suddenly remembered.
Suddenly remembered. Now, Robbie Gene Key is also convicted of grand theft himself. Look him up. He was married to Darlie Key for quite a while. He's no longer married to her. He owned a property out there by Donnell's house. He no longer lives there.
Darren coming to him a few weeks before the murder and saying, I am broke. I need to find someone who's going to break into my house, steal all my stuff, my furniture, my jewelry, my valuables, hide it away in a U-Haul. I will claim the insurance, get the insurance money, and I'll be back to even, and then load up my house with this furniture that's been hidden away.
Now,
and I said, well, is that...
Now, hold on. Now, you look at the furniture that was in their house, right? They had a couple leather couches. They had some $12,000 drapes, which is probably the most expensive part of furniture they had in the lower area. Had a couple tables, right? He was $200,000 in debt. According to this show, he was $200,000 in debt. Now, if you look around the scene, you got a couple leather couches and a big screen TV. And off in the other room, they had a nice table. But the most expensive thing down there was the $12,000 drapes that sold with the house. They're still with the house. So how would that make him break even and set everything straight? He would have to pay the person that he hired to break in his home, for one. And they're walking out of there with roughly $10,000 worth of stuff. That's if they took the 2 couches, the leather couches. That's all that was downstairs. Upstairs, kids' rooms, a bed. He didn't have that much expensive furniture in his house. He didn't.
True. And Cooper says, go ask Darren.
Cooper says, go ask Darren. Because he knows that appeals bullshit. That affidavit that Darren wrote is bullshit. But I'm going to go on further.
So I meet Darren at a restaurant. And I said, did you hire somebody to try to break into your home and burglarize it? And there was this long silence. And he says, are you going to print this? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, I did it. I was asking around.
I was asking around. But he can't name these people he was asking around. And that family does not go after him. It was a setup from Darlie Key, Rob Key, and Darren to cast reasonable doubt. Right? This is, at the end of this, they kind of go through that.
And I said, did you hire anybody? He said, I never hired anybody. But I did let the word out. The story changes everything if true.
Because if it's true, it changes everything. But it's not true. It's not true. You can tell how the family acts today. They do not go after Darren for even asking someone to come in their house like that. You would have to, if I was Danelle or Dana or some of the other family, I would just be all over him for even asking around. Because it looks like he caused an intruder to come in that house and rob it. Okay? This person didn't show up, this intruder, this alleged intruder, didn't show up with a van outside to put furniture and stuff in. They didn't have that much expensive furniture. Because they know it's a lie.
Because it provides a motive. It provides an answer to a question that has haunted everyone. Why would someone break into a nicely lit home in the middle of the night on the cul-de-sac of a pleasant little suburban neighborhood and just walk in and stab 2 kids to death and cut the throat of their mother and slice her across the arm and then walk out?
Well, did you buy the story? Do you think it was for real? Did you?
Darren was hardly blameless. There had been evidence that he had tried to get someone to steal his Jaguar and take it to a chop shop when he was going.
There was no evidence of that. Skip Hollingsworth says there was evidence of someone trying to get someone to steal his Jaguar. Later on in this same show, Darlie says Barry Fife took the car. She said, I found out about things I didn't know about back then. Again, I can't stress. If someone stole my car, I have a Mazda SUV outside, right? If someone stole my car, how am I going to keep that from my wife? Am I not going to come home complaining about it? Darlie says she didn't know about it. Darren says Barry took the car. Darlie says Barry took the car. It's a plan within the family to get her out of this stuff. They want you, a person just looking at this case, to think, man, he's had to have done it. But he hasn't given enough information to incriminate himself. Now, if he literally blamed and said, I asked Barry Fife to break in my house, then they'd have to go to Barry Fife. And then Darren would look like a liar. He'd look like he's covering up for her. And they could probably get him with the law of parties on the murder charge.
Going broke in 1996. And there's always been the question of what did Darren do after he discovered that his children had been stabbed to death. Mm-hmm. And that mystery, which the prosecutors never went into during the trial, because they
never went into the insurance scam till after the trial. They never went into it till after the trial. He didn't put that affidavit out until 2002. That's why they didn't go into it. If in 1996 Darren was saying that he tried to have people break into his home, he would have been convicted, and Darlie would be free. Because it would have looked like he caused intruders to come into his house. He would have been convicted of conspiracy or something like that. Not of the murders themselves. But she would be free if they'd have done this in 1996. But they did it in 2002. And you say, well, the prosecutors didn't go into that on trial because it wasn't public knowledge until 2002.
Trial was focused solely on Darlie.
And what was your next question to him?
Are you making up this story to give Darlie some wiggle room so when the Court of Appeals hears about this, they might give her a new trial?
And what was his reply?
He said, no. And I said, do you realize that this story, if found to be true, could put you on the spot and right in the hair trigger of the DA? He goes, with a pause, I want to tell you the truth, but I don't want to do anything that might get me arrested and
That's why he didn't name anybody that he asked. And that's why they don't go after him. That's why the family, when I asked Danelle about it, I don't know anything about that. She told me she didn't know anything about the affidavit. Bullshit.
railroaded like Darlie did.
A chance that this could be true, and maybe he set up.
He even says the outside chance that this could be true because he's not buying it. But this is geared towards her innocence. And what they promised, in my opinion, Darlie Key and Dana is, well, we'll say she might be innocent. But he said the outside chance that this is true.
His home to be burglarized, and the word went out, yeah, this guy's looking to get his house burglarized, and two guys, one guy, whatever, comes out and does this, you know, and it turns bad, and he winds up killing two kids and trying to kill Darlie, you know.
And it also leads to the other side of the right man, wrong man, or who committed this homicide.
There is some reasonable doubt about this.
They want there to be some reasonable doubt about that. You got to remember, the whole idea was for somebody to come in and burglarize his home. There was no big truck scene out there. How are they going to get this stuff out of there? Who's going to do it at 2 in the morning? Who's going to pull up with a U-Haul at 2 in the morning? They took nothing. And there was a $6,000 Rolex watch sitting out that Danelle said was hid behind some 2 liters, but you can see the pictures of 2 liters are off the other side. She's a liar. And if she gets a new trial, this will be something that's brought up. So they're trying to get her out on a technicality at this point.
Can we ask you a question? We wanted to talk to you about the Darlie Routier.
Now here they actually are talking to Barry Fife, who had a shop down the road from Darren Routier. They actually found him. And this is what he's got to say.
Case. Do you remember that?
Yeah, my neighbors over there.
Well, apparently there were allegations made about you and Darren that he wanted to maybe arrange for a burglary of his own house. Do you remember that?
He didn't talk to me about it.
Do you?
He didn't talk to me about it. He didn't talk to nobody about it. He talked to the affidavit about it.
Think Darlie is the right person? Do you know anything about Darlie? What kind of person she was?
He did it. I think he did it the whole time.
You think he did it?
I think Darren did it. I just think he snapped.
You think Darren snapped?
Yeah. And when I went over there, the first thing he told me, he said, rough night.
He called it a rough night. That's it?
That's it.
Didn't say anything about the kids or anything? But if he
I think he did it, ran upstairs and acted like he was sleeping or whatever he did, or, you know.
why didn't he kill Darlie?
I think he tried, and she just lived. That's what I think.
Isn't that interesting?
He thought that Darren is the one that killed his children.
But we know that that's not correct because Darlie said she saw a man go out to the utility room, so he couldn't have killed the boys and sliced Darlie and ran back upstairs because Darlie said she saw a man going out. And if Darren were to publicly put on his affidavit that Barry Fife stole his affidavit, he might get his ass kicked for one, for lying, and he could be sued. He can also get in trouble for filing a false report with the court. So that's why there's no names in that.
He kind of denied the stolen car thing that Darren ever came to him about his Jaguar. Fife told us that he believed Darren had snapped due to his declining financial situation and had killed his 2 young boys in a blind rage. The other thing we have to find out about Darren is any involvement with Barry Fife, you know? What about that? Is there any truth to that? And if so, what was it? I think at this point he also knows that his name is being dropped around.
Oh, yeah, he knows.
You know, that he could be involved in this somehow.
There's some juggle things there that weren't explored.
Right. Supposedly the intruders could have been a setup for a burglary that went real bad because Darren was out there. You know, he had done an insurance scam before, or at least contemplated one. This could have been another one, and it just went ugly. It went real ugly, you know. So there's a few things here.
That's what they want you to do. Here's where they go to interview Darlie. And I can tell you, I know firsthand knowledge that you're not going to get an interview with Darlie unless you play neutral or play, I don't know, or play completely innocent. I know that for a fact. And I'll prove that very soon.
Sure waiting to fry this young lady because it's been since 19.
No, I would not.
Why?
Because I found out things that I didn't know about back then.
Like what?
Well, I found out that Darren was talking to somebody about having the house set up for an insurance scam, an insurance kit, whatever it's called.
Now, Beja told me something completely different, which just throws me off. But Beja told me that both of them asked her to be involved in it. So, an insurance scam with the house. It blew me away when Beja said that. But listen to this. She has said, I found out about things I didn't know about back then. Again, I can stress, Darlie can name anybody she wants. She's got the death penalty. What are they going to do? Sue her for estate pay? What are they going to do? Give her more time? She can name anybody she wants in here. Liability is not a problem for her.
Barry Fife?
Yes, Barry Fife.
And?
And they had talked about having his car stolen. And Barry took the car.
Barry took the car. They were still in possession of that 86 Jaguar Turbo 400 on June 6, 1996.
And I was mad.
And I was mad. She was mad when she found out that Barry took the car. She said she didn't know about it back then. There's nowhere else that you hear any story of that car actually being stolen. Not that black one. Nope. Now, their conclusion is reasonable doubt. They're not sure. That's the only reason they got an interview with Darlie. And they were hard on Darlie in there on purpose. Darlie knew ahead of time that they were going to drill her. She probably knew ahead of time that they were going to say, hey, we're not sure that she did this or not. To cast reasonable doubt. So here's their conclusion.
In the end, despite Darlie's conviction, Reggie and I weren't convinced. She was put away largely on circumstantial evidence, too thin and flimsy to put someone to death.
The information in this program concerning Darren Routier, Barry Fife, or others potentially implicated in any crime stems from documents, which is Darren Routier's affidavit that was filed with the court. They didn't buy it. His document is filed with the court. This covers them from liability against Barry Fife. If Barry Fife wanted to sue Court TV, they'd say, hey, Darren wrote an affidavit. But that affidavit doesn't say anything about Barry Fife. It's only Darlie saying it. This is a lie, because it doesn't say his name on it. The evidence presented at her trial and from press accounts of the story. That covers them for liability. That was in 2007. Those are some of the things that are wrong with the wrong man.